Hello again, and a very special welcome this week from the 100th edition of That's Gardening, which comes from East Sussex. Later in the programme, with the Gardeners' Royal Benevolent Society, we shall be meeting a gardener who is even older than the programme. He's actually 103, and Fern visits the most amazing place, a whole street full of fine gardens. But what a wonderfully evocative garden this one is to start in. It's Monk's House near the village of Rodmell, not far from Lewes. Think of almost anyone who mattered in English, literary, artistic and academic circles in the first half of the 20th century. T.S. Eliot, E.M. Forster, Lytton Strachey, the economist Maynard Keynes, the socialite Lady Colfax and the artist Roger Fry. They, of course, were the Bloomsbury group, and they came here to this garden to visit its owners, Virginia and Leonard Woolf, who lived and gardened here for many years. Virginia died in 1941, but Leonard stayed on here until his own death in 1969. Well, today the garden's in the care of the National Trust, and its tenants, Martina and Alan Parks, work hard to keep alive that old gardening tradition. Martina, have you consciously tried to recreate the garden as it was when Virginia and Leonard Woolf were here?
Well, we can't really replant it exactly in the way as it was. We've been trying to replant in the spirit of Leonard and Virginia Woolf. So we have been reading up in the diaries and in Leonard Woolf's papers what was in the garden and have been trying to reintroduce plants that were there in their times.
And I'm right in thinking they were both keen gardeners. In a sense, it was the garden that attracted them here, wasn't it?
Yes, although Leonard was the keen gardener, I think Virginia preferred just sitting in it and writing.
And Virginia's writing room was actually at the bottom of the garden, still is.
Yes, she loved the writing room because she could look down in the valley of the Ouse and see the downs in the background.
So in fact, Leonard was the keener gardener of the two.
Yes, indeed. And there's actually one story when Virginia was calling him saying, Hitler is making his speech on the wireless, and he said, I'm planting Iris reticulata, and he was planting them in the orchard under the apple trees and saying, and they will still be there when he is long gone.
That was 1939.
Yes.
And are they still there?
A few of them, and we have introduced lots more.
One of the things that interests me is that this is a very English garden. And immaculate as your English is, this is not your native country, is it?
No, I'm from Germany, but I love English gardens, and I'm very, very happy to be able to work here and to live here.
And you presumably also must gain inspiration, you and Alan, because you're both artistic, you're both musicians.
Yes, we both sing, but we have an interest in the whole Bloomsbury group, which started a couple of years ago and has grown since, and our little library is growing all the time.
And tell me about, you are the tenants of the National Trust. Do they offer you professional advice on the way it should be planted, or are you left to get on with it?
Well, we have some advice. The National Trust Garden Advisor is coming once a year, and we discuss what should be replanted or reintroduced, or maybe if we should change an area. And also when we first came here, the garden was not at National Trust standard, so we got a gardener to help us for the first year to bring it back to National Trust standard.
Which leads me on to the next thing I was going to ask you. Now it is just you and Alan do it.
Yes.
So where's the division of labour? Who does what?
I do mostly the flower beds and put the seedlings out and decide what we're going to buy and what we're going to put back in, and Alan cares for the lawns and the shrubs and the trees. I think there's constantly something to do, and I'm sure we rediscover some plants in their papers that we can put back in, but that's mostly work for the winter.
I think if they knew what you were doing, they would be very satisfied and very pleased to feel that their tradition was continuing.
Yes, I hope so.
How often do you walk along a street where you see that every house and every front garden, which incidentally happens to be on the other side of the road here, looks so inviting that you want to walk straight up to the front door, through the house, into the back garden to see what it looks like? Well, you can here in Ambrose Place in Worthing. You see, the whole street is part of the National Garden Scheme. It didn't used to look as good as this or as cohesive as this. It's all been brought together by one woman. She's called Mary Rosenberg, and she lives at number 1, the old vicarage. Mary, can you tell me something about the history of this street?
Well, originally they were built in a period from about 1810 to 1815, all individually by the same architect, a man called Ambrose. And it's had its ups and downs as a street. It's been downhill, and now I hope it's uphill.
Why are the front gardens on the opposite side of the road?
Because that was in the original deeds. You see, originally in 1815, from Ambrose Place was fields down to the sea. And that's how it originated.
When you first started the idea of the scheme, was there any reluctance amongst the neighbours to join in?
No, not at all. They enjoyed being invited to a supper party, and we had no trouble at all. Everybody was very enthusiastic. I think it's one of the best things I know for bringing a community together.
Well, tell us what you've got in your garden that's of particular pride to you.
My lily, I think, the arum lily. That's one of my pride and joys.
Are you a very sentimental gardener?
Very sentimental gardener, yes.
Here we are in the middle of the summer and you still have your winter flowering pansies.
Yes, that's right. I can't throw them out. No.
And you've put your houseplants outside.
Always. Oh, the house plants all come out for summer holes, and then they go back in September.
And you've got lots of fruit in the garden.
I have an apricot tree, Moore Park, as in Jane Austen. I have a few alpine strawberries and a tayberry.
You've got the problem of an adjoining building on the side of the house here.
Problem.
What are you putting up there?
Well, there's the Fremontier down there, which is a great success, but not very long-lived. And the fig tree, I'm passionately fond of figs, but at the moment it's barren, so its days are numbered.
Now, you live here on your own now. When you come out in the garden, what does it mean to you?
Everything. It's you get rid of all your troubles, and it's good exercise. Yes, no, I'm very fond of it.
Can I be very rude and ask how old you are?
Well, you can ask. I don't know that I shall tell you. I'm 75, nearly 76.
Well, you're a very good advert for gardening.
That's right. Keeps you fit.
Just around the corner from Mrs. Rosenberg is her neighbour at Ambrose Villa. Now, this lady is called Jackie Leocardi. Now, with a name like that, you'd expect this to have a flavour of Italy. The first hint of Italiana is in this little corner. Now, if this was an English garden, you'd have a couple of dustbins here, wouldn't you? But look, Italians dress it up with all sorts of beautiful pots, very simple plants, busy lizzies and ferns, and a little bit of garden statuary, of course. Now, here's the next hint. The fragrance of a jasmine arch leads you through to the Italian courtyard, with, of course, herbs dotted around for Italian cooking, lovely self-setting strawberries, more statuary, a shady, fragrant nook for you to sit and read your book, or the pussycat to sit. And then beyond the arch, well, bits of, could be Pompeii relics, really, couldn't it? Along a romantic hidden path, and you're in Florence. No Italian garden would be complete without the sound of water, and here you've got cherubs holding their fountain, and of course the lovers, Romeo and Juliet. What an extraordinary street this is.
Well, there'll be more of the lovely gardens of Ambrose Place after the break, and I shall be meeting some of the wonderful old gardeners who live in Henfield. Welcome back. Well, now let's see what practical gardening advice Helen has for us this week.
So Helen, for our 100th birthday, what are you going to do?
We're going to light this beautiful garden. It's going to look sensational.
sounds a bit dicey though,
Not
electricity.
at all. Yes, well, this comes in a DIY kit, easy to do. You can do it yourself, no electricians needed.
I've heard that before.
Well, I did it.
Have you? How long
Yes.
does it take you to do this?
Oh, a good hour and a bit, and a little bit of help.
So what do you get in the kit then?
Well, 15 metres of cable, which
Is this a special low voltage?
very low voltage, and you have a transformer which is so important, 24 volt, and that must be kept dry and out of the sun indoors.
And then plugged into the
That's
mains
right,
in the house.
yes.
If I put a fork through this or children went over it with a pair of scissors or something, it'd be all right with it?
It's supposed to be totally safe.
Supposed to be. All right, I believe you. Then what else do you get on the kit?
2 basic lights,
Yeah.
but then you can add to that, and you can go up to 6 on 15 metres of cable.
Now, actually getting the lights onto the cable
Yes.
sounds like a pair of pliers and wire
Oh,
stripper job.
absolutely not. No,
Oh.
no. When you've laid out your cable, make sure you've got enough for the area you're lighting. That's so important. So we start off with this tiered one, pop it in there. You can move it about, but this is roughly. And then you lay the cable across those 2 pins
Yes.
and snap it shut. And that will have 2 little pinpricks
And pierce that
Yes.
hard rubber casing and get into the
into the circuit.
mains.
Yes, easy, isn't it?
Well, I think that is brilliant. It really only took you an hour?
Well, just over.
And how much does it cost?
About £50 for the basic kit, and that's a couple of lights and the cables and a transformer.
What about when the light bulbs go? Is that
Oh, that's
important?
very important. You must switch off everything when you're dealing with it at any time. Take the light bulb out and replace it quickly, because it will be a drain on the others.
Oh, and they'll all start blowing.
They will.
Like the Christmas tree
Yeah,
lights.
exactly.
Well, I think by the magic of television, we should wish That's Gardening happy 100th birthday and switch the lights on. We're still in Ambrose Place, and now we're going to visit number 7, the home of Roger and Carol Philpott. Roger, you're one of the newest inhabitants in Ambrose Place. What inspired you to create this fabulous courtyard?
Having built the conservatory, which is really a breakfast room, we wanted something nice to look out on.
Have you ever been a great gardener before?
No? Just a potter, still am. I like things that go in pots and baskets and so forth, and the planters, all very nice, but I'm no gardener.
Have
No,
you got
not
any
really.
soil around here?
Nothing. All imported. From next door, from over the road.
Because you've got to keep imported soil like this fed and watered constantly.
That's right. That's Carol's job. We've got something like 4 or 5 rainwater butts around the house. Bathroom water is diverted into one, which we disconnect in the winter time, but again we use that. So we're not reliant on the rain, very much the water butts.
Why have you got a phone box in the front garden?
Well, planning consent for a shed is difficult. So I decided to put a phone box up. It went up and no one said anything. So I got away with it, basically. So in that go the tools, the mower, and the essentials.
Now, being a builder, because you've got access to all these wonderful bits of garden architecture, so how much did the phone box cost you, first of all?
The phone box was £90 at auction. I think the delivery charges were about 30. And as I say, the cost of putting the phone box up were a few beers, because it took 8 guys to put the thing up, because it weighs about 2 ton.
And what about all your lovely chimney pots and things?
Collected over the last 4 or 5 years, really. We're just on the lookout at car boot sales, at garden centres, for anything that's old, really.
And now that you are part of the National Garden Scheme, did you know what you were letting yourself in for when you bought the house?
No. Once you've been involved, you get the bug, and it does urge you on to bigger and better things. I think it's a wonderful system.
Could you ever settle for a conventional garden now?
No, not at all. We have a conventional garden across the road, but in a sense that's quite unique. But the patio garden here, very small, it's still a lot of hard work, but it's a great deal of pleasure. But I couldn't change it now.
few doors down and we come to number 14. I give up. You can't catch anybody out here. Look at this lovely garden. I'm almost nonchalant about it now. There's stilbes, luscious roses, the most well-behaved and beautiful sweet peas I've seen this summer. But in this corner, something absolutely special. Now these are Mary and Hugh Humphrey's bonsai. They're Mary's, actually. Now, her mother grew this bonsai in about 1940, so that's about 52 years old. And Mary reckons this could be the oldest elm tree left in Britain without Dutch elm disease. And then we come from the oldest to one of the newest, a little mountain ash that Mary has grown herself. It's taken 7 years to get that far, but look how well it's training. So I'm sold on the National Garden Scheme, and particularly Ambrose Place. You must come and look at it. Ooh, look at that over there.
One of my greatest pleasures and privileges is being on the council of the Gardeners' Royal Benevolent Society, which caters for the needs of retired gardeners. So I was especially looking forward to coming here to their lovely retirement home at Henfield. Jean Painter, the matron, explained to us how the home is run. Now, Jean, to be a resident here, one has to have been a proper professional gardener, don't you?
Yes, in their own right. Not necessarily all their life, but a considerable time.
And how many residents are there at the present time?
We have 50 residents. Some, of course, are married couples, which is very nice because couples can keep together in the twilight of their years. We have the people who need more care actually in Red Oaks, where we have trained staff and care staff to look after them. And then we have sheltered accommodation, which is in the grounds, and they are self-catering.
And I think before I go and talk to some of the residents, it's worth saying that the society doesn't receive any government funding.
No, it is charitable association here, yes.
Now, the residents, obviously, as you say, most of them gardened most of their lives. Do they still have an opportunity to garden once they're living here?
Yes, they do, because we have 6 greenhouses. We have a specialist in cacti and fuchsia and other plants.
I think I better go and have a word with them, see if I can pick up some tips.
I think that would be a very good idea.
Well, Arthur, I can see you're a man for your fuchsias.
Well, that's one of my loves, I must say. I really do like growing and fuchsias. I've grown them more or less all my life in the estates I've worked on.
Can you remember what they paid you for your first job as a garden boy?
Yes, 5 and 6 a week.
And how many hours was that?
Oh, 60 was the normal hour, yeah. That was, roughly speaking, from 5:30, 6 o'clock in the winter, till dark. Now, in the winter we couldn't work as long as we could in the summer, so the hours were shorter. So the hours we lost in the winter was made up for free in the summer. We didn't get paid for that.
How very generous. And how long did it take you from starting, or anyone, starting as a garden boy, to work your way up at the big houses to be a head gardener?
From the age of 14, I took my first head's job when I was 39.
That was about average, was it?
That was about average. I tried to get head jobs before, and I was told I was much too young.
And given your time again, would you have done it all the same?
Oh, I would do it all again. I'd start again tomorrow. I really would.
Edgar, another very tidy greenhouse. That's the hallmark of a real gardener, no mess.
Thank you very much. I've always had to keep a greenhouse and all the garden tidy, so it's nothing fresh to me.
Now, are you one of these gardeners who moved from one big house to another?
Oh, no. I went when I was 19 to a place, and I've stopped there for the rest of my life.
And one of the things that gardeners get so worried about these days is pests and using chemicals to control the pests. You didn't think twice about it in the old days, did you?
No. There was lots of different remedies that you had. My father told the tale that when he first went out to work, when he was 16, they used to supply the old gentleman with tobacco shreds, and they used to sit in the greenhouse and smoke, and it was a competition to see who could stop in the house long enough before they had to run outside to get a breath of fresh air.
I can't imagine what the health and safety executive would say about that. You sound to me, Edgar, like a man who's had a very contented life and you're now having a very contented retirement.
Yes, I've enjoyed my life. We had some hard times at the big house in the early days. There never was any money in it, but there's a lot of pleasure in it, and this is what I've enjoyed all my life. And I'd do it again if I had the chance.
But there was one resident I was particularly anxious to meet. I couldn't leave Red Oaks without chatting to its oldest inhabitant. Talk about recreating a Victorian kitchen garden. George Cook remembers the real thing. Oh, that's him on the left, by the way. Now, George.
Yes.
They tell me you've got a birthday coming up. How old are you going to be?
Oh, coming next Wednesday I should be 103.
Is that all?
Well, it'll do for a start.
And were you a gardener all your working life, George?
Well, practically yes, from 16. When I went into the garden at 16, and all my life I was, yes, up to I was 74.
Just one thing, George. You must have been born in 1889.
You're right.
You must just about remember Queen Victoria dying.
Oh, lummy, yeah. Yes, I don't remember seeing the old lady. But when I look at my mum, she's just a bit of Queen Victoria. But I do remember the Boer War.
That was...
lummy. General Burrow goes out there with the Antwerp men. He gets a hiding at the Battle of Colenso. Then he goes up Majuba Hill and he gets another one there. And after a bit they said, oh, he better come home, and replaced him with Lord Roberts.
George, that's another programme. We'll come and see you another day because I'm going to have a word with Bert.
Right.
And Bert, how long have you been here at Red Oaks?
I've been here about 5 years.
And,
Yes.
and tell me, where did you spend your gardening life?
In Surrey the whole time at Limsfield.
Oh, yes.
LOMPS, FIELD.
And you spent your whole life on the same estate?
Oh no, I had 5 different places because I started when I was 14, you see.
And can I ask you what year that was?
14, I was born in 1902, so you can judge by that.
1916 you started work?
Yes.
Oh, you're a mere youngster compared with George.
Oh yes, I am. I can't help George being born before me, can I?
Well, I have to say, George and Bert, talking to you two gentlemen, I think you're the best advert for a gardening life I've ever seen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, wasn't that a wonderful story to bring to you on our 100th programme? Next week, I'm afraid there's no That's Gardening because of the European football. Some people will never get their priorities right. But I hope you'll join us the week after when we shall have another of our special programmes from the great Floriade Flower Festival in Holland. Do join us then. But for now, from Sussex, goodbye.